prioritization really mean here? The requirements prioritization is all about a ranking of the requirements in order of their priority, in order of their importance and urgency both. It's not just about importance, but it's also about urgency. So it's not just, if, for example, there could be 1,000 things that are important to you, but it doesn't stop at that. What you really need to understand is, out of those 1,000 requirements, what are the things that are really, really urgent? So that's the thing, that subset of the requirements, perhaps about 10 or 15 of those is what constitutes your subset of important and urgent both. So only those 10 or 15 would be actually the set of requirements that you would like to work on in the next few days or weeks or months. So also, again, as we discussed, this is a continuous process. Again, it's not just one-time activity that you assign the priorities of requirements and you're done, because the point is, every change that you have in terms of requirements, the technology, the lifestyle, the market, the business, the customer needs, opportunities, problems, challenges, everything that is bound to change potentially has an impact on the requirements. And even so, more so it is on the prioritization of the requirement. The things that were so important and urgent a few months ago, for example, about 6 months ago, are not urgent or important anymore now, because there are new challenges, new ways of doing things, new requirements that need our attention and need a work on. So we need to be really wary about it. It's a very, very important thing, because priorities change, people's preferences change, technologies change, business needs change, customers' opportunities, customers' challenges, customers' problems change. And in the line of all these changes, what change? Obviously, the requirements also changes. And if there's a new requirement that came in, the one that you had already prioritized about a month, 2 months, 6 months ago, obviously that needs to take a back seat and give way for the newer requirement, newer change, or newer way of doing things. So very, very important that we understand this principle, that it is possible that prioritization is a continuous process, and we must be on the top of the prioritization of the requirements every time. So what does that really mean in terms of the input-output diagram? We've got requirements and design coming in as input. Obviously, those are the important things that would feed into the overall activity. And once you have that, then you would need to understand the business constraints, the challenges, the problems, the opportunities, the needs, all the business rules. And then you also need to understand the domain knowledge. For example, that's where we're talking about industry, the market changes. Within your own market, within your own domain, if it's healthcare, if it's life sciences, for example, it has seen a significant set of changes in the last few months in the context of what we're going through now, the lockdown and the impact of the virus. So it's important that we understand how this is going to affect not only just the healthcare and the life sciences domains, but also potentially across all the sectors in the economy and in the world, global scale, right? So it's very important. We need to address whatever change that we have got, whatever requirement that we have, how that could potentially impact multiple other related domains and related aspects. And the requirements architecture in terms of how that whole thing would pan out. So what is the kind of architecture that we're talking about? So is the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements. The FERPS Plus model, for example, talks about what are the functionality, what are the features, what are the set of features that we would need to work on, and how do they relate to the non-functional aspect of the usability, the security, the reliability, performance, availability, maintainability, all these scalability, all of these have got a kind of interrelation amongst each other. And that's why, for example, there's always that kind of a trade-off, isn't it? For example, things like you've got long queues in the airport for checking, for going through the passenger checking, their security, and that's something that you're okay to do with, because that's important. You can't not have the security and at the same time feel that I need to have a quick access into the lounge, and I need to have quick access to the airplane that I have booked, because there is always the trade-off. But still, you're happy to go through this because it's an essential thing. Security at the airport is important. You can't just say that I don't need it and I just want a quick pass through. Even though it's a bit of discomfort for you, still go through that. Similarly, for an application, for a product that you have got, a digital platform or a product or a mobile app that you have got, it needs to have security in terms of making the physical access of that making sure it is fully encrypted. It's in transit, as well as when it is put in a data store, it has got encrypted data, so people cannot check the passwords. So if you see some of the kind of things that we have seen in terms of hacking of these some of these big organizationals or even banks and other organizations, travel companies whose data got hacked into, and then millions of the customers' data got compromised with, right? Why that happens? Because perhaps they would not have taken measures to understand the impact or the importance of security. So we need to be wary of all of these different things when we come up with the architecture for the requirements, right? So we need to understand the relationships, the trade-offs, the dependencies amongst these requirements, and then be able to come up with a proper architecture, proper planning and preparation for that. And that would again lead us straight into the change strategy. So which means that we are in a position to be able to accept any changes that come through, and whether it is so we should have some kind of a change control board at the organization level, and also at the project level, the PCCB and the OCCB, as what we call organizational change control board, OCCB, and PCCB could be the product or the project change control board, which is at the level of the project or the product that we're working on, or the process. So any change that you have coming in from either the customers themselves or the team, or some suppliers or external stakeholders or the regulators, any of these changes coming in whatever form, whatever shape and size, they need to be addressed, they need to be analyzed. All the changes need to be properly studied, analyzed, and their impact needs to be understood clearly. And then only we need to take a decision whether we're going to have a go or no go to implement that change, to accept the change and work on that in terms of our own analysis, design, and then finally the code and testing, right? So this kind of strategy needs to be in place. How are we going to accept the change? How are we going to address the change? What are the potential sources for these changes? How are we going to understand them? How are we going to analyze them? How are we going to actually incorporate the change once we have finished analysis? What if we have taken a no-go? What happens to the change, right? All of these need to be thought through, and then there should be some strategy that should be in place. And again, for that, what is important again is the governance approach, because this actually sets up the structure for delivering that strategy of the change that we were talking about, a change control, change management strategy. Could be again done it as we discussed, having an organizational change control board at the top, and then we have got the project level change control board, which would look at some of the changes that are coming through from inside the organization, and the small changes, again trying to understand the impact of these, or the sizing of the change. If is it small change, is it cosmetic change, is it a bigger change, is it massive, or is it a showstopper that needs to be everybody needs to stop their work, what they're doing, and then look at this particular change, right? So because it is huge, it's massive. I mean, that's what we're looking at now. For example, the impact of this virus on the each and every aspect of our life, of our professions, of everything is so massive. It's a showstopper. Everybody has to stop the way what they were working on, whatever they were thinking about, whatever they were trying to have fun, their entertainment, their lifestyles, their professional lives. Everything has to stop and then just take a pause, because it's a showstopper. It actually brought everything down to a stop, literally. And that's why this kind of a change had to be addressed in the way that it needs to be. It can only be addressed in the aspect of a lockdown, having this kind of stringent measures in place. Otherwise, this change is going to impact massively across. It's already done so, but if we didn't have all these measures of lockdown and the solid stringent measures, we would have actually total chaotic situation would have happened. So again, this governance approach, right? This kind of track and trace, and then people being reported the local level, and then your self-quarantining, isolation and stuff. All of these are important, because having the symptoms out, the kind of symptoms laying down, this is the definition of a symptom. If you see these symptoms, do these kind of things, the communications percolating down to everybody, including the people who are in their homes, hospitals, care homes, watching the TVs and reading the newspapers, looking at the website. They should be made aware of this. How do you do all of these things, right? This is all through proper governance approach, and that's what we have been doing in the last few months. In fact, and it's really showing a good progress. But well, we didn't have any other choice, right? We can't do any other way apart from what we have done. So, and the solution scope again is in terms of how we can structure the solution given all these different aspects of the changes and different aspects of requirements. How can that be impacting in the way that we are trying to structure a solution? What is the scope of the solution? What is inside and what is outside? What could be the potential applications, the systems, the products that are outside the solution scope, but still that have got some input into it? So perhaps some kind of interfaces need to be there. There's a billing system that we're working on, but that billing system is within our periphery, within our scope. But then there are some other applications of the suppliers that we need to interface with, right? So which are outside our control. That's totally outside our control. For example, there is a order management application which we're using for third party, but which we need to use to place the order. And once the order is placed, then we have to have this the billing and the invoicing system kicking in, which can manage the rest of the process. So it's very important for us to understand what we're trying to do and what is the level of influence that we have within that particular solution and what is outside our control. All of these need to be clearly laid out. In terms of the, again, the tasks that would potentially use this, we've got business constraints, the business rules. All of these, again, would potentially use this, the prioritization of requirements, because obviously they are the ones which have a direct impact on how our requirements, our solution would behave